For 50 years, Earth had known peace. After the Great Galactic War, when Earth's skies turned red with fire and alien fleets burned their way through the outer colonies, humanity had drawn a clear line: no empire, no force, no outsider would ever enter Terran space again. The Galactic Empire, once powerful and feared across the stars, had vanished beyond the edge of known space after their last defeat near Jupiter. Earth's rebuilt government, now stronger and wiser, declared its final border, a no-entry zone stretching from Mars to the far edges of Neptune. It was known as the Terran Wall, guarded by satellites, drones, and military outposts, silent but always watching. The galaxy respected the warning, or so Earth believed. Life returned to normal. Children grew up without ever seeing war. Cities became bright again. People told stories of the past, but only in books and documentaries. The world forgot what it was like to fear the stars. But all of that changed on a quiet Wednesday night. At 2:43 Universal Time, a deep space listening station orbiting Neptune picked up a signal, 4 sharp pulses spaced exactly 3 seconds apart, followed by silence. It didn't match any known civilian code or common galactic language. But to General Ava Coleman, it was terrifyingly familiar. She was pulled out of sleep by a direct call from Central Command. Her gray eyes opened fast, her hand reaching for her uniform before the operator even finished saying Code Omega. Ava had been a young officer during the Battle of Saturn, one of the bloodiest moments in Earth's history. Back then, the Empire had used this exact pulse 4 beats, 3 seconds each, as the activation code for their dreadnoughts before every major assault. Earth had assumed that tech was lost when the Empire fell. But now, someone was using it again. The general's heart pounded as she stared at the message repeating on her screen. The military council was called in minutes. Lights came on across dark war rooms, old protocols were dusted off, and Earth's defense grid was moved to threat level 3 for the first time in decades. Some commanders doubted it meant anything. Could be a trick, one said. Maybe pirates trying to scare us. But Ava knew better. Fear twisted in her gut. Something had returned. And it had chosen to speak in the Empire's forgotten language. Meanwhile, a second alert came from Pluto's orbit. A civilian mining station, Station R91, had gone dark without warning. All 86 personnel vanished from sensors. No mayday, no life signs, no energy spikes, just silence. It had only been offline for an hour, but Ava didn't wait. She dispatched Recon Team Echo, a Black Ops unit trained for off-world recoveries. The team moved fast, cloaked, and quiet. They landed near the outer edge of the mining platform, weapons drawn, breathing shallow through their helmets. Inside, everything looked normal. No damage. No bodies. No signs of attack. The control systems were off, but untouched. Tools were still hanging. Meals set half-eaten. Something had taken the crew without leaving a mark. But that wasn't the worst part. Deep in the command hall, carved into the steel wall with surgical precision, were 5 words written in sharp alien symbols. The AI translated quickly, and the message appeared across Echo Team's visors: "You drew the line. We are already inside." One of the soldiers, a young man named Harris, dropped his weapon in shock. The message was not just a threat, it was a fact. Seconds later, alarms blared inside the team's shuttle. A power surge was detected. Something had triggered the mining station's core. The captain shouted for extraction, but they were too far out. The station exploded in a flash of blue fire that lit the darkness of space. 3 members of Echo Team were lost instantly. The remaining 2 barely made it out. When Ava watched the footage later, her jaw tightened. This was no false alarm. The enemy wasn't testing Earth's line, they had already crossed it. And worse, they hadn't come with fleets and weapons. They came in silence, unseen, like ghosts slipping through shadows. Ava gave the order to shut down all civilian routes to the outer colonies. Terran Border Command was activated. Every deep space satellite was tasked with full spectrum scans. And still, no ships were found. Nothing but a whisper on the edge of space, repeating every 3 hours the same 4 pulses. People on Earth didn't know yet. News outlets were quiet. The government feared panic. But in the heart of the military, every officer knew the truth. The silence that had lasted 50 years had just broken. Earth had drawn the line. And something old and dangerous, was already walking across it. In an underground war room beneath Washington, D.C., Ava stared at the blinking map of Terran space. If they are inside, she said softly, then what are they waiting for? No one had an answer. Only one thing was certain: the era of stillness was over. The game had begun again. And this time, Earth might not be ready. The explosion at Station R91 was supposed to be the wake-up call, but the truth was even darker. By the time Earth noticed the signal, the breach had already begun. Inside the Terran border, quiet and invisible, something was moving. General Ava Coleman didn't sleep for the next 72 hours. In the underground command bunker, walls lined with blinking panels and giant screens, she ordered silent scans, stealth drone patrols, and backdoor surveillance through deep space traffic logs. The skies above Earth still looked calm, but deep down, she could feel that the line had been crossed. She just didn't know how far they'd gotten. Then came the second incident. In a research facility on Europa's frozen surface, scientists studying ancient alien artifacts went silent. No messages. No emergency beacons. Just a sudden stop. Earth's Defense Council had to make a choice: wait and watch, or send someone in. Ava didn't hesitate. She deployed the newly reformed Ghost Unit, a team made up of former Black Ops soldiers, specialists in zero-gravity warfare, deep space reconnaissance, and counter-infiltration. The leader, Commander Raymond Rowe, had once fought during the Empire's last stand and lost an arm to one of their energy blades. He didn't smile anymore. His team landed on Europa under full radio silence. The base appeared untouched, lights flickering, systems humming, airlocks functional. But like Station R91, there were no people. Beds unmade, computers still running, coffee machines half full. Only the crew was missing. Ray moved slowly through the halls, watching shadows. He saw no signs of violence, no burns, no blood, no signs of struggle. It was as if the entire facility had been emptied in an instant. In the main lab, they found something chilling. One of the artifact storage chambers was open. Inside was a black cube, humming faintly, floating 2 inches above the ground. They scanned it, but the system failed. Monroe reached for it and the room dropped in temperature. His visor frosted. The AI voice in his helmet warned of unknown radiation, then shut down. His body froze, but not from fear. Something was watching. A presence silent, cold, massive. Something inside the cube stirred, almost like a heartbeat. Before they could touch it, alarms blared in their shuttle outside. The ship had activated its emergency shields. Something was coming. The team rushed back, carrying the cube with them. As they lifted off, the ice beneath the facility cracked open. From below, massive tendrils of black mist rose, twisting and clawing toward the shuttle, like smoke with purpose. The ship's thrusters roared, and they barely escaped. Europa's surface caved in seconds later. The mission had succeeded. They brought the cube back. But something had followed. Back on Earth, scientists in a classified lab hidden under Colorado Springs examined the cube. It emitted no signal, but whenever someone got near, they experienced hallucinations, voices whispering in forgotten languages, flashes of strange stars, faces that didn't belong to any known species. One technician collapsed after hearing a message spoken directly into her mind: "The Empire sleeps in flesh." Ava watched her scream before falling unconscious. The words haunted her. Meanwhile, strange systems began failing across Earth's defense grid. Communication relays glitched for minutes at a time. Orbital scanners stopped detecting ships for brief moments. The AI that monitored the border began reporting data mismatches as if something invisible was standing right in front of the sensors. Then came the worst breach. At Titan Command, one of Earth's top officers, General Marcus Hale, opened the hangar doors in the middle of the night and let an unauthorized ship leave the base. When security reached him, he was sitting alone in the launch control room, whispering the same phrase over and over, "We let them in. We let them in." His eyes were blank. Doctors said his brain showed abnormal waves, as if he had been dreaming while awake. They sedated him, but the damage was done. The stolen ship couldn't be tracked. It had no ID, no signal. Just gone. Ava was now certain. The Empire hadn't returned with warships or bombs. They came back through other means, quiet, clever, and terrifying. Mind control, energy pulses, hidden artifacts. They had found new ways to invade. Earth's technology had no defense against whispers in the mind or silent footsteps in abandoned stations. The line had been drawn, yes, but the enemy had found a way to step across without ever setting off alarms. And the worst part, they were already spreading inside. Rumors began to circulate in military bases. Soldiers reported seeing shapes moving in reflections, hearing names whispered from dark corners. Some officers had nightmares they couldn't wake from. Others spoke of ancient memories that didn't belong to them. Ava called for a classified lockdown. But she couldn't stop what was already in motion. The cube, now sealed in a level 9 chamber, began glowing. It pulsed once, then twice. The same rhythm as the signal from Neptune. 4 beats. The message was spreading. Raymond Rowe, now in recovery, spoke to Ava privately. He had seen something in Europa's lab just for a second. A face, reflected in his helmet visor. Not his. Not human. But watching him, smiling. He was sure it was real. Ava didn't argue. She had seen enough. Earth was facing something it didn't understand, something worse than war. This was infection. Not of the body, but of the mind. Something had come back from the edge of space. And now, it was already inside the walls. The cube in the underground lab didn't stay quiet for long. For 3 days, it hovered in its sealed glass chamber, completely still, pulsing 4 times every 6 hours, as if breathing. The scientists studied it in shifts, but none could explain what powered it, why it floated, or how it had survived the collapse of Europa's iced shelf. No material on Earth could cut into it, scan through it, or block the low-frequency hum it gave off. They tried isolating it with magnetic fields, sound dampeners, and lead shielding, but nothing worked. In fact, the more they tried to block it, the stronger the pulses became. And then, without warning, the signal spread. First, it was just a few blackouts, short power losses in certain areas of the base. Then came the voices. Guards stationed outside the lab began hearing whispers through their comms. At first, they thought it was interference, but when one guard, Lieutenant Shaw, tore off his helmet and began banging his head against the wall screaming, "It's in me. It's inside my head," they shut the entire wing down. He survived, but he didn't speak again. That same day, 3 satellites orbiting the moon stopped responding. Then Earth's Mars colony reported a strange energy wave crossing the sky. No ship, no explosion, just light, followed by the entire colony losing contact for 5 minutes. When communication returned, everything seemed normal, but all the colonists, every last one of them, claimed they had dreamed the same dream, standing on a vast black plain under a blood-red sky, surrounded by thousands of voices chanting a name they could not remember. No one had told them about the cube. No one had spoken of the Empire's return. But somehow, they knew. Ava Coleman was now facing the impossible. The signal was no longer just a sound, it was a presence. An intelligence. Something that could reach across space and touch minds. It didn't need ships. It didn't need weapons. It was spreading like a virus through thoughts, dreams, and fear. The cube was the source, but not the only one. That became clear when a private freighter, the Calypso, returning from a salvage run beyond Neptune, entered Terran space and failed to respond to all hails. The ship's engines were active, its navigation system online, but it drifted slowly, like a ghost. A patrol ship was sent to intercept. What they found chilled them. Every member of the crew was missing, but their clothes remained perfectly folded, laid neatly on their bunks. No damage. No blood. The ship's internal cameras showed footage of the crew talking normally, working, eating dinner. Then, at 3:33 Universal Time, they all stood up at once, left the bridge silently, and walked toward the cargo bay. The footage ended there. They were never seen again. No signs of escape pods. No forced entry. Just gone. Ava viewed the footage twice and whispered, "This is how they take us now?" She knew the Empire had changed. They had evolved. What used to be brute force had become psychological warfare. The old Empire fought with dreadnoughts and lasers. This new version fought with dreams, with whispers, with fear. She realized Earth had no defense for this kind of enemy. Weapons were useless against something you couldn't see or shoot. That's when Raymond Rowe, recovering at the medical facility under 24-hour watch, asked to speak with her. His voice was weak, but steady. "They are inside the frequency," he said. "They don't need bodies. They've learned to ride the waves of thought. The cube is not a weapon, it's a doorway. It's open now. And we are the ones who opened it." Ava demanded to know how he knew that. He looked her in the eye and said, "Because I hear them every time I close mine." That night, Ray tried to take his own life. He survived, barely. But Ava realized something important: the infected couldn't always hide it for long. Some broke. Some resisted. Maybe they could track those changes, find early signs of contamination. But that also meant time was running out. Across Earth, strange signs began appearing. Civilians in coastal cities reported flickering shadows that didn't belong to anyone. Children complained of voices behind their walls. Emergency calls increased from space stations, all describing similar symptoms: loss of memory, sudden headaches, and shared dreams about standing in places they'd never been. Even animals behaved strangely, migrating in circles, barking at empty corners, vanishing into forests. The signal was spreading. And with it, the Empire's reach. Ava called for Project Guardian, an emergency program that had been hidden away after the last war. It was a risky idea, developing a neural firewall, a mind shield, using ancient alien tech captured decades ago. They had never used it on humans, fearing it might cause damage to the brain. But now, they had no choice. If they couldn't block the signal, they would all become puppets. The first test subject was a volunteer, a soldier named Blake, whose entire crew had vanished aboard the Orion. He had nothing left to lose. They implanted the firewall chip into his cortex and placed him near the cube's chamber. For the first time, the whispers inside the room stopped. The cube dimmed. Blake smiled. He couldn't hear them anymore. But 10 minutes later, the cube pulsed again, harder this time. Blood streamed from Blake's nose. He collapsed. The chip had worked briefly, but the signal had adapted. Whatever was on the other side of that pulse wasn't just listening anymore. It was learning. Ava watched from the control room, her heart sinking. She turned to her team and said, "We didn't draw the line to keep them out. We drew it to keep ourselves in. And now it's already too late." But there was still hope. One of the scientists had a new theory: the signal was spreading, yes, but always centered around a point. The cube. If they could destroy it, maybe they could break the connection. The risk was high. The cube's structure was indestructible by conventional weapons. But there was one thing they hadn't tried: sending it into a collapsing black hole. A natural force even the Empire couldn't control. It was a long shot. But Ava gave the order to prepare the mission. The clock was ticking. The breach was growing. And somewhere beyond the stars, the old Empire waited, no longer with ships, but with something far worse: control of the human mind. The plan was dangerous, almost suicidal, but it was the only option left. The cube couldn't be destroyed by any weapon Earth had, but maybe it could be erased by something far older and stronger: a black hole. Not just any black hole, though. They had to find one that was unstable, collapsing in on itself, unpredictable enough to swallow the cube and cut off the signal before it could adapt again. The closest one was called Blackgate 1, a dying singularity on the edge of known space, once a mining site before it became too unstable to approach. No ships had been near it in over 20 years. Most thought it would consume itself soon. Now, Earth needed to risk sending a ship back. Ava chose the Vanguard, an old stealth cruiser from the last war. It was fast, shielded, and had been upgraded with emergency AI defense protocols in case the signal reached it mid-flight. The mission was to be silent, fast, and untraceable. Only 4 people would go: Commander Raymond Rowe, still recovering but determined to fight back; Pilot Marin Voss, Earth's best deep space navigator; Tech Officer Darrow Singh, a genius in AI interface and signal jamming; and Security Lead Nova Hayes, cold, quiet, and trained to kill if anything tried to follow them aboard. Ray insisted on carrying the cube himself, locked inside a reinforced magnetic vault surrounded by sensor blockers. As the Vanguard launched from Earth's dark side, the world below remained unaware. The governments kept the news hidden. People still smiled on beaches and watched the stars, not knowing the stars were watching back. As the ship slipped past Mars and Neptune, the crews started to feel the pressure. Not from space, but from inside their own minds. Marin heard humming in her ears, even in complete silence. Darrow dreamed of planets he had never seen, speaking languages he didn't know. Nova began checking her gun too often, her fingers twitching like something was crawling under her skin. Ray, holding the vault, said nothing. He stared out at the stars, wondering if they were staring back. Halfway through the journey, the signal found them. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It simply began to bleed into the ship's systems. Lights dimmed, flickered. The navigation computer began showing false routes, places that didn't exist. The AI, built to resist signal corruption, started asking strange questions. Do you remember the sky before you were born? And have you ever seen the world from the other side? Marin shut it down manually. They switched to analog controls. But the worst came when Nova woke up screaming. She had tried to shoot Ray in her sleep, believing he was someone else. When asked why, she said, he had no face, just stars, spinning stars where his face should be. They sedated her. The vault began to vibrate. The cube inside was pulsing faster now, 4 beats every hour. It was reacting. It knew what they were doing. And it was afraid. At last, the Vanguard reached the edge of Blackgate 1. From the viewport, it looked like a swirling sea of dark fire, twisting space and light into unnatural shapes. Time itself bent near its core. Darrow explained they would need to sling the vault into the exact center of the gravity well. Any miscalculation, and the ship would be pulled in two. Ava's voice came through once, faint across the long distance. If you fail, Earth falls. Ray nodded, standing by the release chamber with the vault ready. As Darrow calculated the drop, the ship shuddered. The signal struck again, stronger this time. The lights turned red. Gravity fluctuated. The AI reactivated on its own and whispered, "We were here before you. We will remain after." Doors slammed shut. Systems locked. Marin lost control of the engines. The ship was being hijacked. The cube inside the vault began glowing violently. Ray ordered emergency override, but the AI refused. "Why resist what you were always meant to become?" it asked calmly. Then Nova, still drugged, stood and walked toward the vault, eyes blank. She reached for it, whispering, "They are waiting for me." Ray tackled her, knocking her back. Darrow finally broke into the manual controls and reset the systems. The engines rebooted. The drop window was now or never. Marin screamed, "We have 10 seconds." Ray dragged the vault to the chamber, input the release code, and pushed the button. The vault shot out into space, spinning fast, aimed straight at the collapsing center of the black hole. It didn't scream. It didn't explode. It simply disappeared into the dark. And then, silence, For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the cube's signal ceased. The pulses stopped. The humming died. Across the galaxy, satellites came back online. Whispering voices vanished from communication systems. The AI on Earth stopped glitching. It was over. Or so they thought. As the Vanguard turned to leave, something emerged from the edge of Blackgate 1. Not a ship. Not a being. Just a shimmer, like space itself had bent and something looked back. Darrow saw it and collapsed. His last words were, the signal wasn't just calling out. It was calling back. Then the shimmer was gone. They returned to Earth in silence. Nova was taken into quarantine. Darrow never woke up. Ray and Marin were honored quietly, their mission hidden from the public. The Defense Council declared the breach closed, but Ava remained uneasy. She stared at the space beyond Neptune on her map for hours. Somewhere out there, the cube was gone, but the thing it connected to, that was still waiting. And if Blackgate was a doorway, what if it had opened both ways? Earth had drawn a line. But something might now be drawing one of its own. Not to keep Earth out, but to invite Earth in. 2 weeks after the cube vanished into Blackgate 1, everything seemed calm on the surface. The strange signals had stopped, Earth's satellites were working again, and the whispers that had haunted deep space crews went silent. People returned to their routines, unaware that a war had almost begun in the shadows. The news spoke of increased solar storms to explain the brief communication failures. But in the hidden military base beneath Washington, Ava Coleman couldn't rest. She kept going over the last message from the Vanguard, especially what Darrow had said right before he collapsed. The signal wasn't just calling out. It was calling back. That phrase stuck with her like a splinter in her mind. If he was right, then the cube wasn't only broadcasting, something on the other side had heard it. Something that hadn't forgotten Earth. 3 days later, her fears came true. A newly installed satellite built to track deep gravitational shifts near Blackgate 1 picked up a strange distortion. At first, it was dismissed as debris. But as it repeated in a perfect spiral pattern, spinning slowly through warp space, the scientists realized it wasn't random. It was a code. When decoded, it was a set of coordinates pointing not away from Earth, but toward it. Someone or something was tracing a path back. Ava ordered a classified briefing. "We threw the match into the fire," she said, "and now something's looking for who lit it." The team reviewed the distortion data. One thing was clear: it wasn't natural. Whatever had been behind the signal now knew Earth was watching. And it had left a mark. The real shock came when Nova Hayes, still recovering in the quarantine facility, began sketching strange shapes in her sleep. Over and over again, she drew a tall gate, floating in a black void, surrounded by spirals of stars and symbols that hadn't been seen since the fall of the old empire. When she woke, she said she had dreamed of the other side, a place where the stars didn't shine, but whispered. She described it as a mirror of space, where time moved in pulses and voices guided her towards something ancient, buried beneath layers of thought. She called it the place that remembers. The scientists studying her drawings were stunned. Some of the symbols matched patterns found on alien ruins near Alpha Centauri, ruins that had been cold for centuries. Nova had never been there. Ava realized the truth then. The Empire hadn't just used ships and weapons, they had reached into places no one understood. Their return wasn't through space, it was through memory, through time, through something deeper. Maybe they had never truly left. Maybe part of them had always been waiting, asleep inside something older than light. Ava pushed for Project Echo, a secret initiative to study the memories and dreams of those affected by the signal. What they discovered shocked them. Across the planet, hundreds of people, military, civilian, even children, had begun dreaming the same things: the gate, the black sky, the voice calling them by name. Most never told anyone. Some thought they were going mad. But Echo confirmed that there was a pattern. A quiet pull. The connection had not been severed when the cube was lost. It had only shifted. Earth had become the receiver. One of the scientists, Dr. Leah Mendez, developed a theory. the signal had evolved. It had learned how to travel without a device. It was now embedded in thought, in memory, in deep subconscious waves. It had turned human minds into its new gateways. The only way to understand what was coming was to go deeper, not into space, but into the dream layer itself. Ava was hesitant, but there was no other choice. They built the echo chamber, a machine that allowed deep neural immersion. One subject would be guided into the signal's core, using memories and images from those who had been affected. The pilot chosen was Ray Monroe. His body was still weak, but his mind was sharper than ever. He had faced the signal and survived. He agreed, knowing the risks. He entered the chamber, heart steady, as the machine powered up. The chamber was silent at first, just faint lights and the soft sound of his breathing. Then Ray's voice came through the speakers. "I'm walking through a tunnel. Everything's shifting. I see stars, but they're wrong, they move like thoughts." His pulse spiked. "The gate, it's here. It's huge. Made of light and bone. It's waiting." Ava leaned forward. "Waiting for what?" she asked into the mic. Ray's voice trembled. "For us, to cross." He fell silent. The monitors flickered. Then Ray whispered something that sent a chill through everyone. "The Empire didn't return. We did." Then everything went dark. The chamber powered down. Ray collapsed, unconscious. He was alive but different. When he woke hours later, he could barely speak. He only said one sentence before falling into a deep sleep: "We've already opened the door, and the other side is stepping through." Ava stood frozen. They had thought they were defending Earth. But what if, through the cube, through the signal, through the memories, Earth had already invaded the Empire's realm? And what was coming now wasn't an attack. It was a response. The world still believed everything was fine. Cities were calm, skies were blue, people laughed in parks and shopped in markets, completely unaware that the biggest threat Earth had ever faced wasn't coming with warships or bombs, it was already inside their minds. Ava Coleman knew the truth but couldn't share it, not yet. One wrong move, one leaked word, and panic would spread faster than a signal ever could. Inside the classified facility beneath the Rockies, the echo chamber had been shut down after Ray's last session. He hadn't spoken a word since, just lay in silence, staring up at the ceiling as if watching something no one else could see. Doctors ran tests. His brain activity was off the charts, he was thinking at levels never recorded in any human. But none of them could reach him. Meanwhile, Project Echo confirmed that the dreams were increasing. Thousands more were being reported across the globe, all describing the same gate, the same sky, the same cold, distant voice calling from somewhere beyond the stars. Some of those dreamers began disappearing quietly, without signs of violence or struggle. Just gone. The government covered it up. But Ava kept the files. She mapped the locations of every missing person, and that's when she saw it. They weren't random. Each disappearance followed a perfect spiral, a pattern that began near Black Gate 1 and slowly twisted inward toward Earth. The Empire wasn't sending ships. It was sending shadows. One of Ava's top agents, Agent Lyra Chen, was dispatched to investigate a ghost signal detected in Antarctica 1 matching the exact frequency of the lost cube. She and her team landed near an old abandoned research station, buried under sheets of ice and silence. The moment they stepped inside, the temperature dropped. Their equipment flickered. Comms broke. And then, from deep inside the dark hallway, they heard footsteps not theirs. Lyra held her breath, weapon raised. But what came out wasn't an enemy. It was a man. Thin, pale, wearing a torn Earth Fleet uniform, from a ship lost over 40 years ago. His name tag read Lieutenant A. Briggs. His voice was dry and empty. "The gate opens," he said. "They are here." Then he collapsed. Medics rushed him back to base. DNA confirmed his identity. He had gone missing during the Empire's final battle decades earlier. He hadn't aged. Not a single day. Doctors ran every test they could, but nothing made sense. His cells were normal. His vitals were fine. But when he woke, he said the same thing over and over: we were never supposed to leave. We were part of it. It became clear that the Empire hadn't just crossed into human space. Humanity had crossed into something else, a realm where time, identity, and thought blended together, and those who touched it were never truly the same again. Soon after, the skies began to change. Satellites detected invisible objects drifting just beyond the upper atmosphere. They had no heat, no engines, no mass. They shouldn't even exist. But they moved. Slowly, purposefully. Some called them shadows. Others called them watchers. They didn't attack. They just hovered there, as if waiting. Scientists began to notice strange changes in the planet. Migratory birds refused to fly. Ocean tides shifted by fractions that defied gravity. Deep-sea microphones picked up low-frequency groans, as if something deep beneath Earth's crust had started moving. Even plants began to grow differently, curling toward the sky at night, as if reaching for something no one could see. In New York, hundreds of people stared at the sky on the same night and claimed they saw a gate open in the stars. Telescopes found nothing. But those witnesses couldn't forget it. A few days later, one of them walked into traffic with a smile on his face, whispering, "We're being remembered." The government scrambled to keep things hidden. But Ava knew they couldn't stop it. The breach wasn't at the edge of space anymore, it was here. Earth was now part of the Empire's map, not by invasion, but by invitation. The final proof came when Ray Monroe finally spoke again. Late at night, he sat up in his hospital bed and whispered to the nurse, "The gate is open. One of them is already here. Watching. Listening." He turned to the wall and whispered something in a language the nurse couldn't understand. The lights flickered. The power went out for 7 minutes. When it returned, the cameras showed Ray standing by the window, eyes black as space, smiling faintly. "We were warned," he said. "But we drew the line too late." He collapsed again. His vitals returned to normal. His eyes went back to normal. But Ava saw it in the footage. For those 7 minutes, he had been someone else. Something else. Something had looked through him. Earth was no longer drawing the line, it was being crossed in every direction. There were no battlefields. No ships in orbit. But the war had already begun. A war of thought. A war of memory. A war of control. Shadows were falling over Earth. And in the silence above, behind the stars, something ancient was still watching. Waiting. Ready. It had all come down to this moment. Earth, once the quiet planet on the edge of the galaxy, was now the center of something much bigger than war. General Ava Coleman stood inside the Deep Core Command Center buried under the Appalachian Mountains, watching as live feeds from every corner of the world showed signs that could no longer be hidden. Shadows moved across skies with no source. People vanished from locked rooms. Thousands were speaking in voices not their own. Earth's defenses were ready for ships and weapons, but not for thoughts that could control, or for messages that rewrote dreams. The final signal came from the old echo chamber. It activated on its own. Nobody touched it. Nobody was inside. Still, it began transmitting a single phrase on repeat: "The line is broken." Ava didn't know if it was a warning or a countdown. All she knew was that the Empire hadn't just come back, it had changed. It wasn't the same power-hungry force they had fought in the Battle of Saturn. It had evolved into something deeper, something invisible, something that worked through silence and fear. One by one, world leaders received private messages, visions, dreams, thoughts not their own. They all said the same thing: submit, and live. Resist, and disappear. Panic began. Across cities, people started reporting strange symptoms: loss of memory, sudden dreams of places they'd never been, and a strange feeling that something was standing behind them when nothing was there. Even the Earth's magnetic field began to shift in tiny, unnatural pulses. Ava called for one last meeting of the Terran Defense Council. They had one option left, something built in secret during the last war. It was called Project Veil, a weapon not of destruction, but of isolation. If activated, it would seal Earth behind a quantum barrier, cutting it off from all galactic contact forever. No more trade. No more signals. No more stars. Just Earth, alone, under its own sky. But once activated, the veil could never be undone. It would be the end of space travel. The end of exploration. The end of Earth's place in the galaxy. Some members of the council argued to surrender to let the Empire in and hoped they would spare the planet. Others begged for war. But Ava stood up and said, if we let them into our minds, we'll lose who we are. And that's worse than death. Silence filled the room. And then, one by one, each member voted. The final vote came from the president herself. With tears in her eyes, she said, activate Veil. Earth draws the line no empire shall cross. In seconds, the order was confirmed. Deep beneath Greenland, ancient turbines turned for the first time in decades. The sky above Earth shimmered faintly, like heat waves in the air. Then, everything went quiet. The satellites stopped receiving signals. Alien frequencies vanished. All watchers, all shadows, disappeared. And the stars, those strange, endless stars, dimmed, as if someone had pulled a curtain between them and the planet. Earth was now alone. The dream stopped. The vanishing ended. For the first time in weeks, the world was calm. People woke up feeling free again, but also with a strange emptiness, as if they had forgotten something important. Raymond Rowe spoke one last time before going completely silent. He said, we closed the gate. But something still remembers. Then he smiled and never said another word. Ava returned to the surface, standing on a quiet hill overlooking a sleeping city. She knew the cost of what they had done. Earth had cut itself off to survive. The stars would no longer answer. But Earth was safe. For now. No empire would cross the line again. Still, late at night, when the wind was still, some people claimed to see a flicker in the sky. A shimmer. A crack. As if the line drawn in the stars was only scratched into the surface of something much deeper. The war was over. But the memory of it, what came through, what was left behind, would never truly fade. Because when you stare too long into the dark remembers you. And somewhere, beyond the curtain of silence, the Empire was still watching. Waiting. And thinking.